It was a freezing winter night in New York City, the kind of cold that seeped through layers of clothing and chilled you to the bone. Jack, a homeless man with a kind heart, was wandering through the back alleys, searching for anything that might help him get through another harsh night on the streets. His breath formed little clouds in the air as he moved, his mind focused on finding warmth and perhaps a bit of food. As he rummaged through a dumpster, hoping to find something useful, he heard a faint, muffled cry. At first, he thought he was imagining it. He stopped, listening intently. The cry came again, weak and desperate. His heart began to race as he followed the sound, leading him deeper into the alley. There, in the middle of a pile of trash, he saw a small bundle wrapped in a dirty blanket. Welcome back to PlotTwister. Before we unravel today's mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you're always in the loop. Jack's eyes widened in shock. It was a baby, tiny and fragile, with a face flushed from the cold. Without a second thought, Jack gently picked up the bundle, his hands trembling. The baby's cries grew louder, sensing the warmth and comfort of human touch. Jack looked around, hoping to find someone, anyone who could help, but the alley was deserted. His mind raced. He knew he had to get the baby to safety. Clutching the child close to his chest, he hurried through the streets, his own discomfort forgotten. He headed towards the nearest shelter, a place where he knew they could get immediate help. The baby's cries were now softer, but Jack's heart pounded with urgency. When he burst through the doors of the shelter, the staff were taken aback. They quickly realized the gravity of the situation and sprang into action. One of the workers gently took the baby from Jack and rushed to call the police and an ambulance. Jack stood there, breathless and overwhelmed, as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The police arrived swiftly, their flashing lights illuminating the shelter's entrance. They took statements from Jack and the shelter staff, trying to piece together how a baby ended up in a dumpster on such a frigid night. Jack's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. He watched anxiously as the baby was taken away in the ambulance, praying for its safety. The police officers questioned Jack thoroughly, trying to determine if he knew anything more. Jack could only tell them what they knew: that he'd found the baby and brought it here. The officers thanked him for his actions, acknowledging that he might have saved the baby's life. As the night wore on, Jack found himself unable to leave the shelter. He felt a strange connection to the baby, a protective instinct he hadn't felt in years. He stayed there, hoping to hear any news about the child's condition. The shelter staff offered him a warm meal and a place to sleep, but Jack's thoughts remained with the baby, wondering what would happen next and how something so fragile could be left alone in such a cruel world. Jack sat on the edge of his makeshift bed at the shelter, his mind drifting back to the days before he ended up on the streets. He had once been a proud soldier, serving his country with honor, but life after the military had been tough. Struggling with PTSD and unable to find steady work, Jack had spiraled into addiction and eventually lost everything. Now his days were a blur of survival, each one blending into the next. As Jack pondered his past, the police were busy investigating the origins of the baby. They combed through nearby security footage and canvassed the area, trying to piece together what had happened. They interviewed residents, hoping someone had seen something that could lead them to the baby's mother. The investigation picked up steam, with detectives working tirelessly to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, the story of the dumpster baby spread quickly. Local news stations picked it up, and soon it was all over the media. The public was captivated by the tale of a homeless man finding and saving an abandoned baby. People from all walks of life expressed their concern and outrage, and many reached out, wanting to help the baby and Jack. Back at the shelter, Jack couldn't shake the image of the baby from his mind. He visited the hospital whenever he could, checking on the child's progress. The baby, whom the nurses had named Hope, was recovering well thanks to the quick actions of Jack and the medical team. Each visit filled Jack with a strange mix of joy and sorrow. He felt a growing sense of responsibility towards Hope, a feeling that gave his life new meaning. As the days passed, the police finally made a breakthrough. They found surveillance footage of a young woman leaving the alley shortly before Jack discovered the baby. The detectives tracked her down, identifying her as Sarah, a woman with a troubled past and a history of domestic abuse. They arrested Sarah and brought her in for questioning, hoping to understand why she had abandoned her baby in such a desperate state. While Sarah's story began to unfold, Jack's life started to change in unexpected ways. The media attention had brought him into the spotlight, and people from the community reached out to offer support. A local charity provided Jack with temporary housing, giving him a stable place to stay for the first time in years. The outpouring of kindness overwhelmed him, but it also gave him hope. Jack found himself becoming more involved in Hope's future. He attended court hearings and meetings, advocating for the baby's well-being. The community rallied around him, organizing fundraisers and donation drives to support both Jack and Hope. The media continued to follow his story, painting him as a hero who had stepped up in a moment of crisis. As Jack's bond with Hope grew stronger, so did his determination to make a difference in her life. He knew he had been given a second chance, not just for himself, but for the baby he had found in that dumpster. Each step he took towards stability and recovery was driven by the desire to provide a better future for Hope, a future far removed from the dark alley where their paths had first crossed. Sarah's story, however, remained a mystery, leaving everyone wondering what could drive a mother to such a desperate act. The tension mounted as the investigation continued, inching closer to revealing the truth behind Hope's abandonment. The police had made significant progress in the case. Surveillance footage revealed Sarah, a young woman, leaving the alley just before Jack discovered the baby. Detectives tracked her down and brought her in for questioning, trying to piece together her story. Sarah sat in the interrogation room, her face a mix of fear and defiance. The detectives pressed her for answers, but she remained silent, avoiding their gaze. It was clear she was hiding something. The tension in the room was palpable. Each unanswered question only heightened the mystery. Meanwhile, Jack continued his visits to the hospital where baby Hope was now thriving. Each time he saw her, he felt a deeper connection and a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life for so long. The nurses had grown fond of Jack, seeing the genuine care and love in his eyes whenever he held Hope. One day, as Jack was leaving the hospital, he noticed a commotion outside. Reporters and cameras were gathered, waiting for any update on the case. Jack tried to slip past unnoticed, but a reporter recognized him and rushed over. The media's interest in his story had not waned, and they bombarded him with questions. Jack, overwhelmed but determined to keep the focus on Hope, answered as best as he could, sharing his hopes for her future. Back at the police station, the breakthrough came when Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was shaky, and tears streamed down her face as she recounted her story. She had been in an abusive relationship, trapped with no way out. Her partner had threatened her and the baby, and in a moment of sheer desperation, she left Hope in the alley, praying someone kind would find her. The room fell silent as Sarah's story unfolded, a heartbreaking tale of fear and hopelessness. The detectives were moved by Sarah's confession, but they also knew the law had to take its course. They charged her with child endangerment, but recommended she receive help and support, recognizing the complexity of her situation. The media picked up on Sarah's story, and public opinion began to shift. People were now divided, some feeling compassion for her plight, while others condemned her actions. Jack, upon hearing Sarah's story, felt a whirlwind of emotions. He understood the pain of feeling helpless, of having no one to turn to. He couldn't help but feel sympathy for Sarah, despite the anger and confusion that initially clouded his mind. He knew that Hope's future was still uncertain, but he was determined to be there for her no matter what. The court hearings were intense, with emotions running high on all sides. Jack attended every session, his presence a constant reminder of the miracle that had brought Hope into his life. The judge listened carefully to both the prosecution and the defense, weighing the evidence and emotional testimonies. Sarah's defense argued for leniency, highlighting her desperate circumstances and efforts to protect her baby from harm. In a surprising turn, the judge showed compassion. While Sarah was held accountable for her actions, she was also offered a chance to turn her life around. The court mandated counseling and support programs, acknowledging the need for a humane approach to her situation. Jack's involvement didn't go unnoticed. His dedication to Hope and willingness to understand Sarah's plight touched many hearts. The community's support continued to grow, with more people stepping in to help both Jack and Sarah. As the legal proceedings moved towards a resolution, Jack felt a sense of relief. The baby he had found in that dumpster had not only changed his life, but had also brought a community together. The story was far from over, but there was a glimmer of hope that things were finally moving in the right direction. Sarah's confession had turned the tide of the case, but the story was far from over. She had revealed her desperate attempt to protect her baby from an abusive partner, and the court had showed her compassion. Now she faced the consequences while receiving the help she needed. Jack's visit to the hospital became more frequent. He felt a stronger connection to Hope with each passing day. The nurses saw the bond growing between them and began to refer to Jack as Hope's guardian. Jack's sense of responsibility deepened, and he knew he had to step up for the baby who had brought meaning back to his life. The legal proceedings continued, with Sarah's fate hanging in the balance. Her court-mandated counseling sessions started, and she began to open up about the horrors she had endured. The court watched closely, balancing justice with empathy, ensuring she was held accountable but also supported in her journey to recovery. Jack, on the other hand, found himself in a new role. The community's support had transformed his life. He now had a steady job in a small apartment, thanks to the kindness of strangers who had been moved by his story. Jack used his newfound stability to focus on providing a safe and loving environment for Hope. The media's interest didn't wane. They followed Jack's journey, highlighting the positive changes in his life and the unwavering commitment he showed towards Hope. Public opinion continued to shift, with more people rallying behind both Jack and Sarah. Donations poured in, providing financial support for Hope's needs and ensuring Jack could focus on his role as her guardian. One day, while Jack was at the park with Hope, he received a call from the hospital. Hope was ready to be discharged, and they needed to discuss her future. Jack's heart raced as he hurried back, clutching Hope close to his chest. The doctors and social workers had seen the bond between them and believed Jack was the right person to care for her. In court, the judge reviewed the case one last time. Sarah's progress in counseling and Jack's unwavering dedication to Hope were key factors in the final decision. The judge granted Jack temporary guardianship of Hope, with the possibility of adoption in the future. Tears filled Jack's eyes as he thanked the judge, overwhelmed with gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose. Sarah's journey was still ongoing. She continued her counseling and worked towards rebuilding her life. The community extended their support to her as well, recognizing that her story was one of survival and resilience. Sarah and Jack formed an unexpected bond, united by their love for Hope and the desire to give her the best life possible. Jack's life had taken a dramatic turn since that fateful night in the alley. He had gone from being a homeless man struggling to survive to a devoted guardian with a supportive community behind him. The journey was far from easy, but the love and hope he found in caring for the baby gave him strength. As Jack stood in the doorway of his small apartment holding Hope in his arms, he looked out at the city that had once seemed so cold and unforgiving. Now, it was a place of new beginnings and endless possibilities. Jack knew that together, he and Hope could overcome any obstacle, and their story was just beginning. The day of the final court decision arrived, filled with tension and anticipation. Jack sat in the courtroom, holding Hope tightly, his heart pounding. The judge took her seat and began to speak, acknowledging the gravity of the case and the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them all together. The judge announced that Sarah would receive leniency, considering her desperate situation and her progress in counseling. She would continue her rehabilitation under close supervision, with the hope that she could rebuild her life and one day be reunited with Hope. The room was silent as the weight of the judge's words settled in. Jack felt a mix of emotions. He was relieved that Sarah was getting the help she needed, but his primary concern was Hope's future. The judge then turned to Jack, praising his selflessness and dedication. She granted him permanent guardianship of Hope, recognizing that he had provided her with love and stability. Jack's eyes filled with tears of gratitude and joy. His life had changed in ways he never imagined since finding Hope in that dumpster. The community celebrated the decision. They saw it as a testament to the power of compassion and second chances. Fundraisers continued, ensuring Jack and Hope had everything they needed. Local businesses offered support, and volunteers helped Jack turn his apartment into a warm and welcoming home for Hope. Sarah, though still on her journey to recovery, began to visit Hope under supervised conditions. She showed genuine remorse and a strong commitment to changing her life. Jack and Sarah formed a unique bond, united by their love for Hope. They agreed that her well-being was their top priority, and they worked together to create a stable environment for her. Hope thrived in Jack's care. The little girl who had been found in such dire circumstances was now a bright, happy child surrounded by love. Jack enrolled her in a local daycare, where she quickly became the favorite. He spent every free moment with her, taking her to the park, reading her stories, and ensuring she felt safe and loved. The media continued to follow their story, but the attention gradually waned as new stories emerged. Jack was grateful for the privacy, allowing him to focus entirely on Hope and their future together. The community support never faltered, and Jack found himself with a network of friends and supporters he could rely on. Years passed, and Jack's life transformed completely. He found steady work and eventually moved into a larger home. Hope grew into a lively, curious child, always full of questions and laughter. Jack cherished every moment, knowing how close he had come to losing everything. Sarah's progress was steady. She rebuilt her life piece by piece, always staying connected with Jack and Hope. They created a blended family of sorts, showing that even in the face of adversity, love and compassion could bring people together. As Jack tucked Hope into bed one night, he looked around at their cozy home, filled with memories and the warmth of their journey. He knew that finding Hope had not just saved her life, but had also given him a second chance at his own. The bond they shared was unbreakable, forged in the darkest of times, and strengthened by the love they'd found in each other. Hope's story was no longer one of abandonment and despair. It had become a story of resilience, love, and the incredible power of second chances. Jack knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their lives forever intertwined by the miracle that had brought them together. What are your thoughts on the twist we uncovered today? Comment your ideas below. Make sure to like and subscribe for a daily dose of drama and mystery. See you later with another twist.